It is almost 2025. This is actually my favorite time of the year because I like to set goals. I like to sit down with a journal, pen and a paper and just really think about my life and what I'm trying to accomplish. And for me as a reader, I always set reading goals. But I've learned a few things over the years that some of those goals have really served me and some have actually hurt me in my reading experience. And so today I'm going to be resetting myself and getting ready for the coming year. And hopefully some of these goals help you as well. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Read Well podcast. My name is Eddy and today we are setting goals for 2025. And I've got a couple ideas for you that I think will help as you begin to sort of frame yourself for the coming year. Now, step one, go grab a pen. Step two, grab a small notebook, piece of paper, something to write on because we're going to be working together today. This is not going to be a passive watching experience. My hope is by the end of this video, you'll have a couple things you can change about your reading routine, as well as a few books to think about for the coming year. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is figure out what books really had an impact on you and why. Now, you've probably read a handful of books this year, or maybe you've read way more than you thought you would. Either way, a few of those books really made a difference. And so my first question to you is this. Grab your pen and your piece of paper and ask yourself, what are the 3 best books I read this year and why? Now, don't skip the and why. I know you're going to skip the and why because everybody skips the and why. We don't like to think for whatever reason, but please do not skip this part, right? It's not enough just to write a few titles down and go, yeah, those are really great books. You need to consider why, because doing that will help you find more books like those 3. So I'm going to share with you at the end of this video the 3 books that had the biggest impact on me this year, so stick around if you want to see that. Now, the second thing we need to do is figure out what kind of goals really make the most sense for you. There's really 2 ways to set reading goals. You can say, I'm going to read X number of pages every day, or I'm going to read a certain amount of time every day. I fall into the time category for several reasons. So quickly, I feel like when I tried to read a certain number of pages every day, I felt anxious. I was always trying to keep up with that number. And it sort of put me in the mindset of having to read faster and more. Those were the days when I was trying to read many, many books a year, 25 books a month, 200 books a year, whatever it might be, just mass chaos. When I switched over to a certain amount of time, my brain switched as well. And it said, oh, I don't have to read a certain speed. I can focus on what I'm reading and slow down. And that's when this community was really born for me. I realized I didn't like reading fast because I wasn't retaining anything in the book. When I slowed down and focused on time, that changed. And so here's what I do. I use a little timer. I shared this on my website or my YouTube channel before. It's just a sand timer. I sell it at my bookstore, edgewaterbookstore.com. But it just sits on my desk and it's a 30-minute timer. Now, when I first started, I was able to get through a single 30-minute session a day because I couldn't focus. My brain was all over the place and I was, in my mind, too busy. But I did 30 minutes for a while and then realized that ain't so hard. I moved that to an hour and so on. And now I'm up to an average of about 3 hours a day of reading. So for me, that is flipping this thing over 6 times. Now, I don't do that in an entirely sort of solid block. I do that throughout the course of the day. And I think 30 minutes really is helpful because I can find 30-minute slots in between my meetings, taking my kiddo to karate, and whatever else, having dinner and so on. So I think reading for a certain amount of time is really helpful. Now, if you're in my book club, you're calling bull crap right now because you know that I give everybody in my book club a certain number of pages to read every day. Now, there's a reason for that. It's because we're an organization and we're a group of people reading at the same time. And in order to make sure that we are all in the same spot on Tuesday night when we have our discussions, I have to assign a certain number of pages every day. What I do is make sure that that number of pages is small and very doable. It's usually roughly 10 pages a day, give or take a few pages, depending on what we're reading. That makes it so that I'm not encouraging sort of a speed reading thing, and I'm giving you enough time to really be with the material and love it. And we can stay on task together. But in your own personal life and in setting goals, if it were me and in my own personal life, I will not be going by a pages per day rule. Instead, I'll be going by a certain amount of time. And I have consistently been at about 3 hours a day. That's just me, and that's my goal for 2025. Now, before we keep going, I would love to know what your goal is going to be. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you're going to be going by pages per day or time. And this is not a competition, right? But if you are going to try and read for 10 minutes a day, that is beautiful. Just let me know down below where you're at, and I'd love to comment back. Okay, the third thing that I think is really valuable for 2025 is for us to try and go beyond the book a little bit. There is a huge value in being in a group of people that are either discussing the book or the thing that your books are about. So let's say you wanted to get really good at poetry, or you wanted to dig into Emily Dickinson or Walt Whitman or any of the poets. That's fantastic. To read them on your own is one thing, but if you can find a group of people who are reading poetry, either in person or online, your experience is going to go through the roof. It's going to be much better. Maybe this year you want to learn how to make pottery or how to read Shakespeare. There are groups out there that are having live pottery classes. There are classes on Shakespeare. I would encourage you this year to commit to joining something. Let's get out of our homes, into our communities, and let's be beyond the books, right? Let's read the books, but then let's go do the thing. And I think that's going to make a huge difference for our experience. Now, little story about me. My entire life, I wanted to be good at Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. I'm just not good at it. I have read several of his plays, and I'm just wowed by them. But I know there's so much I'm missing, and I can't get it on my own. So I actually signed up for a university course. It's going to be a 3 or 4 month course starting in January. So perfect time for me. And we're going to be discussing 5 of Shakespeare's major works, which is amazing because I'll be in a group of 30-ish people. I'll have a professor to guide those conversations. And that's what I'm talking about. So for you, see if you can join a book club or a group of some kind, and let's put these books to work. One last tip for 2025 if you want to make it a really good reading year, and then I will share with you the 3 books that had the biggest impact on me. So this year I went through my books and I realized that there were many on my shelves that I really didn't want, didn't need, didn't care about, and I did a little spring cleaning. I took all those books out and I dusted them off and I donated them to the book drive in my community. One, it made my reading room feel manageable. I used to come into my reading room and it felt like a weight on my shoulders because it was just cluttered. It's still a little cluttered. I got to work on that. But it was just, there were all these books that I knew I wasn't reading and I knew I was never going to read. And for some reason that created a sense of guilt, not shame, but guilt. Like, I'm never going to get to that. So I really pared my books down to the ones that I really care about. Every book on my shelf has been read or will be read by me. There are no fluff books in this room. That feels really good. And if you're interested in improving the space in which you read, the environment, consider getting rid of the books you know you're never going to read. Hey, I lied. There's actually one more tip for 2025 that I think will be helpful to you. Now that we've sort of cleared out the bookshelf, go ahead and grab your pen and your paper again and write down the 3 books you're really interested in reading this year. The books that you have sort of been putting off, that you one day you'll read, but you haven't quite gotten there yet. Write those down and let's make a study of them this year. Let's really dig in. In my community, I teach that it's better to read well than to be well read. And all I mean by that is that it's far better, in my opinion, to pick even just one book a year and to really dig into it and to study it and to take notes and to apply the lessons in your life. If you did that, you would be a better human because of that book. Far better than reading 200 books this year and not remembering anything about them. So let's take a minute now. Let's identify 3 books that are on your shelf that you know you've been putting off that you'll benefit from if you'll read. I went and got 3 out of my shelves, and here they are. So I've been wanting to read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman for years. This is a book that really picked up some steam over the past few years. He recently passed away, but this book is just the kind of thing I love to read. It's philosophical, it's psychological, and it's backed by tons and tons of research. Plus, he's a great writer. His writing is not so heavy that I get lost in it. At least I feel that way. So yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is definitely going to get read this year. I love philosophy, you guys. I've gone back to school now to get a degree in philosophy. And Hannah Arendt is a philosopher that I've always just absolutely admired. I think she's fantastic. But I have not done a good study of her work, and I really want to. I can't say whether I agree with all of her ideas yet or not because I haven't read the book. And this has been on my shelf for a few years now, and I think it's time for me to dig into the portable Hannah Arendt. Really excited about that. The third book on my shelf that I really want to read this year is The Essential Kierkegaard. This one, well, it's big. I mean, it's over, I don't know, it's close to 500 pages. But it's one of those philosophical books you're just like, I feel like I could like hold my car down with this. Like if my car was, popping a wheelie, I could put this on the hood and it would just hold the car down. These things are heavy and they're thick and they're whatever. But I really like where Kierkegaard's coming from in some instances, and I want to learn his work. He inspired a lot of other philosophers down the road, so I want to dig into that. Now, those are 3 books for me. You're probably not interested in those, but what are the 3 books you want to read this year? Okay, now let's get into the 3 books I read in 2024 that just changed my life. Oh, wow. This book... So this is Sophocles, and in Sophocles there is a drama, a play called Antigone, and it blew my mind, you guys. You have got to read Antigone. This is one of those things that you can just Google online and you can read it for free. You don't even have to buy the book. You can get the PDF of it now. And really what Antigone is it's sort of a clash of titans. You've got this young idealistic woman named Antigone, and then you've got this all-powerful king named King Creon, and they are... Creon, I think it's Creon. Anyway, they sort of clash. And the reason why they clash is because of belief systems. Now, she believes that her brother, who's an enemy of the state, should receive a proper burial because she's his sister and she loves him. And in Greek sort of myths and culture, if you don't receive a proper burial, you're not going to heaven. You're going straight to, the outer worlds or whatever. So it's critical for her that she bury her brother, even though he's a bad guy. The king does not want that. He wants the body left out on the hillside to be eaten by crows as a public demonstration of what happens when you're a bad guy. Do not cross the king. And so this story is just, it's wild. I feel like I'm reading a really great thriller, sort of just... Go read it. Antigone by Sophocles. This thing was written in like 440 BCE, a long time ago. And the fact that he wrote so well and it's so gripping is just fantastic. And the second book that I read this year that really changed me as a human being was Flowers for Algernon. Now, if you've watched my show at all, you know that Dr. Martin Jacobson comes on the show every now and then, and we get talking and nerd out about books and stuff. He's a professor at Texas A&M, teaches linguistics and English and all sorts of other stuff. Great guy, a lot of fun to talk to. And he sent this book to me and said, you've got to read this. And so I did. And this is the first book I've read in a long time where I literally stood up and screamed. I was, my kids were looking at me like, Dad, are you okay? Like, what is wrong with you? I was crying. I don't cry. Not because I'm manly, but just because my crying doesn't work. It worked in this book. It's exciting. It's sad. It's the story of Charlie Gordon, and he is a mentally handicapped man who is in this institution where scientists have discovered a procedure that can improve intelligence. And they perform this procedure on a mouse named Algernon. Algernon becomes a very wise mouse, can run through the rat mazes at amazing speeds, and so they decide to try it on a human being. Charlie is nominated for the procedure, and the story is of Charlie going from mental handicap to his path of sort of geniusness, and then what happens after. It explores the ethics of experimentation on human beings. It explores sort of what happens to us as humans as we go through a range of emotions from different intellects. It's really good, you guys. In fact, it's one of my favorite books, and when I opened my bookstore this year, I was only able to start with 17 books because adding a book is I have to buy a bunch of the book to get it cheap enough to make a bookstore. So I was able to start with 17. This was one of them. And every book that I add into my bookstore, I also create a little notebook to go with it for people that are geeky like me and want to take notes. So this is my Flowers for Algernon notebook. This is the book, and it has a huge place in my heart. So that's number 2. And the third book is actually, I'm really excited about this one because this comes with a little bit of an announcement. So at my bookstore, edgewaterbookstore.com, because I have limited funds and limited space, I can only add one new book every month because I also have to take the time to do the research, get the notes, create the notebook, get the art done, print it all, and so on. So I add one new book and notebook every month. The book that I just finished was so good. I'm like, I have to add this. So this is going to be my December 2024 book of the year. And the book is Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin is a book written by Harriet Beecher Stowe in the 19th century. This is understand this. This book teaches us that our actions matter, but it does it in such a strong and effective way that, again, you're crying, you're angry, you want to change the world. You also see beauty in people and kindness. But this is one of the few books I've read that have made me see humans differently. It has made me want to be a better father, a better husband, a better neighbor, all of that stuff. It's just a really good book. So here's what happened. 19th century, Harriet Beecher Stowe is, out and about, and she is stuck in the world of slavery, and she is just distraught by it. So what she decides to do is write this book, and as she does so, she does such a good job at writing the stories of the slaves as they experience pain, loss of children, as they're ripped apart and sold to different families. Husband goes this way, wife goes this way. She writes about the angst and the torment so much that the slaveholders, as they read this book, realized that their slaves that they considered to be property were in fact human. Okay, last but not least is the process of taking notes. If you're moving into 2025 and you're thinking, I want to do better at taking notes, right? I want to use these little things, these little notebooks from Edgewater, or I have my own note-taking system, or I do it on digitally, whatever it is. Maybe you want to get better at note-taking. And if you're curious about how I take my notes, I made a video explaining that step-by-step right here. You can go check that out now. And as always, thank you for reading slowly, taking notes, and applying the ideas. I'll see you next time.